My name's Gene Tunney. I'm the current Secretary of the Queensland branch of the Economic Society of Australia, and it is a great honour for me to be introducing David Kalisch, the Australian statistician, for this keynote address. So, as an ex-Treasury man, I'm well aware of the importance of the ABS, and I'm sure a lot of you are. We're all probably great users of ABS data, and I think we're privileged to have such high quality and data and over such a wide range of topics. That said, the ABS has been in the news recently. There have been concerns about the reliability of some of its data, particularly the labour force data, and I'll be interested in hearing David's views on that. There's also been a debate about the census and whether we should move to a 10-year census or a 5-year census. Move to a 10-year census instead of a 5-year, so again, another issue. And there was also the security issue that made the papers that is something that I'm sure is on David's mind all the time, given the sensitivity of markets to the important information that the ABS collects and releases. Okay, so today David will talk on the state of economics statistics in Australia. Just a bit of background. David was appointed as Australian statistician in December 2014, and he's an economist with over 30 years' experience in public policy, with an interest in labour markets, macro and microeconomics, and social policy, as well as organisational performance. Previously, he was the CEO of the Australian Institute for Health and Welfare. He was a Productivity Commissioner, Deputy Secretary in the Commonwealth Department of Health and Ageing, following earlier senior executive roles in Canberra and the OECD in Paris. So, at a time when economic statistics have never been more important, after 6 months in his role, David will reflect on the state of economic statistics and the challenges and opportunities facing the ABS. So, could I please introduce and welcome to the stage David Kalisch, Australian statistician.
Thanks very much, Gene. Can everyone hear me if I sort of speak from here? That'd be great. So good afternoon. I'd also like to thank the organisers for this opportunity to speak on the role of ABS in economic statistics. The ABS is a long-time sponsor of this conference and is pleased to continue our support. Now, there is a long-standing relationship built on mutual dependency between economists and statisticians. In 1933, and this is just for Matthew's benefit, the Commonwealth statistician at the time, E.T. McPhee, stated, "It is, I think, obvious that as economic opinions must rest largely on statistical evidence, some knowledge of economics is essential to the proper selection of statistical data. I feel that statistics and economics are so closely associated that in practice they are inseparable." Now, this statement was made by McPhee as Commonwealth statistician in the context of supporting Roland Wilson as his successor. A year earlier, in 1932, Wilson, on appointment as Australian Commonwealth statistician, had become the first economist appointed at a senior level in the Commonwealth Public Service. In 1936, Wilson succeeded McPhee, and as many people know, it was a role he was to hold for 15 years, and he became Australian statistician at the age of 36. And I was mentioning to someone that I had the pleasure of going to a Roland Wilson Foundation dinner about a month ago, and they were talking about Wilson. He did one PhD at Oxford. He was a Rhodes Scholar, but he didn't think it was good enough. Didn't think it was rigorous enough, so he did another PhD at Chicago. He then became the longest-serving Treasury Secretary in Australia. And also, I suppose very relevant to this forum and the awards dinner that we had last night, he was also in 1988 made a Distinguished Fellow of the Economic Society of Australia. Now, the close partnership between economists and statisticians has continued. The tools of economists have been described as devices which bring together people, knowledge and material things in ways that can turn messy, endlessly complex world into a formal, calculative, order that can be used productively. Now, reflecting on some of the tools, it's evident that they're shared by both economists and statisticians, and perhaps the obvious one is the system of national accounts, a conceptual framework developed through collaboration between economists and statisticians. Now, just to give you, I suppose, just a little bit of a potted history about the ABS, particularly in terms of its recent experience, the range and quantity of statistics produced by the ABS has increased enormously over the years. In 2013-14, we released over 700 statistical products in that one financial year. There were 13.7 million visits to the ABS website and 2.8 million downloads of ABS data. I think the envy of most media outlets. These statistical products form the bedrock for economic analysis and decision-making across the private and public sectors in this country. The ABS is perhaps often unreasonably seen like a utility company, where at the flick of a switch or the turn of a tap, many users expect the delivery of timely and robust statistics to support analysis. Expectations are high, and our users have very long memories. I began my term as Australian statistician in December last year, and one of the first things I did was speak to a number of key stakeholders of the ABS. And these key users, to a person, could recite the handful of major quality issues that the Bureau had had over the past 2 decades. Probably about one every 5 years, with the sort of 700 odd releases that we have each year. Now, the ABS understands the importance of these national statistics, and we certainly recognise that we need to have a zero-risk approach to the quality of our main economic indicators and population statistics that are crucial to many important choices and decisions, and we work hard to get them right first time. This robust and timely information must also be delivered efficiently, properly respecting taxpayer funds that fund these national statistics. As John Fraser mentioned at lunch, we do operate in the constrained fiscal environment across the public sector. Now, to just give you a sense of some of the metrics, over the last 15 years, the Australian population has grown by about 25%. The economy, as measured by GDP, has grown by 60%, and Commonwealth Government outlays in real terms by about 90%. So by any measure, the statistician's job is getting harder. But what about the ABS? I don't mean to whinge, but I'll just lay out the facts. Over the same period, the number of ABS staff has fallen by 25%. We have 1/4 fewer employees than we did in 1998, when I would note that Joe Hockey was the minister responsible for the ABS, as he is now. These figures provide some indication of the challenge that the ABS faces to measure a dynamic economic and social environment and the greater efficiency of our processes. Now, the importance of information is increasingly being recognised across government and elsewhere. In recognition of today's changing information environment and the needs of government, business and the community, the government will invest an additional $250 million over 5 years in the ABS for critically urgent upgrades to our business processes and ICT systems. Now, this significant government investment will provide the infrastructure required by the ABS to continue to deliver timely and quality economic statistics, demographic information, environmental and social statistics for Australia. Of interest to many in this room will also be that this budget funding also secures the production of annual input-output tables. However, aside from the IO tables, this funding does not provide for any increases in our work program. We expect that the investment will over time reduce our costs, help manage some quality risks in our processes, and at the moment we're seeking to manage probably about 500 different computer systems and statistical systems through the Bureau's work program. It will also position the ABS to improve the range of potential statistics in the future. However, at this stage, any new statistical enhancements will only be possible through the provision of additional funding or through substitutions within our existing work program. And key users of information, particularly our lower priority statistics, may need to more directly contribute to ABS resources if they want particular data enhancements or data to continue. Now, the historic $250 million government investment in the ABS, and it's the first time that there's been this type of investment in the Bureau for over 2 decades. It's an important step, but also the ABS recognises that we must go much further in transforming the information needs transforming to meet the information needs of our users, which are constantly evolving, and that developments in information technology also provide exciting new opportunities. We need to better recognise that the information resource and expertise of the ABS is a central part of Australia's key infrastructure. It was interesting to note at sort of lunch that there was a question about infrastructure from John Freeburn, and I suppose I'd like to see data and our statistical resource being seen increasingly as part of Australia's national infrastructure, which, if used wisely, can contribute to a more informed community, better decisions, growth, and productivity enhancements, and the efficient operation of markets. Now, the functions of government and complexity of social structures demand the continual expansion of statistical inquiry, and certainly there's been no reduction in the ambitions or interests of economists for what the ABS can do. Now, at the ABS, we're up for and also committed to meeting the challenges which confront us. And in meeting these challenges, I probably see 3 main areas of focus for the ABS over coming years. Firstly, ensuring the continued delivery of robust, timely data. Second, increasing the level of innovation in order to meet new and emerging needs. And thirdly, improving the availability and use of data through building strong partnerships. And I'll now briefly discuss each of these. So as I mentioned, the ABS does produce a very large range of statistics on an ongoing basis. This data provides the bedrock on which Australians build an understanding of their economy and society. Key macroeconomic statistics on income, demand, production, prices, and employment inform decisions on fiscal and monetary policy. Demographic and population data inform decisions on investment, both public and private. And household income, consumption and wealth data inform the debate on fairness and opportunity. Now, rightly, the users of this data see any interruption to timeliness or quality of this data as unacceptable. These data are embedded in the setting of different policies, and they're essential to the efficient operation of markets. Now, the challenge faced by the ABS is to continue to provide data in a resource-constrained public sector environment and in a world of constant economic and social change, which measurement must respond to. Now, the economy is, to quote Alan Greenspan, getting lighter. An ever-growing proportion of GDP doesn't weigh anything. Services of all descriptions, online information and content, intangible assets, and so on, all of which provides measurement challenges and requires changes to measurement approaches. Now, to confront these challenges, we need to not only change our measurement approaches, we also need to update and adopt the underlying conceptual frameworks and standards. And this infrastructure, usually maintained internationally, is critical to the production of coherent and robust statistics. And these processes seek to balance how measurement needs to keep up with changes in the real and financial dimensions of the economy, with the desire of many users to maintain the comparability of time series and not change the underlying dimensions. So even in our continued delivering of ongoing data, there is no sitting still. Expectations are that we will deliver data with improved timeliness, with greater frequency and reduced cost, and with improved or at least consistent quality. We are really conscious of this need to maintain that continuity of service, and if I could just comment briefly on the labour force issues from last August, September. I think one of the key lessons for the Bureau was that they tried to do probably about 8 changes to the labour force series over a matter of a few months. 7 of the changes were well adjusted and taken into account in terms of the statistical processes, but there was one that was not, and that was what caused the blip in the sort of August-September numbers. Somewhat ironically, we also, in doing our latest seasonal readjustment, reanalysis, and we do this each year in March, we also identified a similar issue in 1991. that hadn't been identified at the time. And so we have actually readjusted those numbers for 1991 if anyone's using that data. But just, I suppose, gives you a bit of a sense of some of the challenges. And I think was a really good pointer for the Bureau in terms of saying, look, we've got to get it right. We've got to get it 100% right in some of these key series. But I think that the second aspect I'm going to talk about is actually about innovation. Continuing to do the same thing will also not be sufficient into the future, even if that same thing involves being just that bit quicker in delivery or that much more efficient. We are in the information age. There are new opportunities, there are new needs, and there are increased expectations. The extent to which innovation is already occurring within the ABS is probably not fully appreciated, and I suspect this is not really surprising. There is little time or opportunity for users to look under the bonnet of statistical production, and the ABS, being a relatively modest conservative organisation, has not drawn attention to its innovative developments as well as it should have. And I'll just give you, I suppose, a taste of the innovation that's taking place with just two examples, one in the economic area, or one from the commercial side and one using government data in a more effective way. Now, private sector commercial data is being utilised by the Bureau in the compilation of the CPI. From some key retailers, we now receive weekly scanner data of their complete sets of scales, complete sets of sales. So when you sort of put your product across the scanner, they aggregate the information to it. We get the information on the products that have been bought and the prices that have been paid. Now, this has replaced our traditional reliance on ABS field officers collecting shelf prices with their clipboards for about a quarter of the items priced in the CPI. And I suppose what it's giving us is more timely information, but the other dimension that we're seeing is actually the potential to go much further. So we're also investigating how the scanner data and other data that could be sourced from commercial sources could be used more extensively in the future by the ABS for a range of purposes, such as updating information on household expenditure. And if anyone's filled out a household expenditure diary, I'd expect you'd think this is pretty good. So we've currently got in the field our latest household expenditure survey, where a number of our fellow Australians are doing it for the team and filling out a diary for 2 weeks of all of their expenditures. Now, we believe that we can get a fair bit of this information through other commercial data sources. Now, the ABS has also, just to give you another example, also developed a linked employer-employee data lead analytical system, which safely links personal income tax data with business data from a range of administrative and survey sources. It's intended to provide an integrated analytical environment for cross-sectional and longitudinal data, and the ABS is currently evaluating the potential use of this lead analytical system for providing key insights for a range of challenging analytical problems in the areas of firm-level productivity, labour market dynamics, industry restructuring, and regional economic activity. This, I suppose, just gives you a couple of tastes of how the environment is changing for us in terms of new information opportunities, but also about how we can use information that's already currently around in smarter ways. And desirably reduce the respondent burden on both businesses and households. Now, the ABS also has the capacity to pursue greater improvement to what it does and how it works. The rate of innovation needs to accelerate in order to seize the new information opportunities which are emerging and to meet the emerging policy questions and dilemmas facing business and the wider community. This challenge requires the ABS to adapt its own processes and operations to ensure we're able to produce new information products. And the ABS is embarking on transformation writ large. This includes not just a refresh of our infrastructure, but we're also assessing the way we operate and our processes for conducting surveys, the administrative and transactional data sources we utilise, the manner in which this data is processed, linked and disseminated. And we're also looking to utilise this government investment in the ABS to leverage new information opportunities and to deliver a range of outcomes, including reduced respondent burden, more efficient operations, and a more flexible and responsive statistical program overall. We're also looking at, I suppose, how we operate as an organisation in terms of looking at the culture of the place, looking at the diversity of our workforce and whether we've got the right skills that we need for a contemporary national statistical organisation, which is quite a challenge. And I'd have to say it's a challenge that is not just being addressed in Australia, but many other national statistical agencies are also facing the same issues, confronting the same dimensions and pursuing the same directions. The third aspect I wanted to talk about today was around improving the availability and use of data, particularly through building strong partnerships. And this goes to, I suppose, part of the culture change dimension of the ABS, in terms of us engaging more effectively with users of information and those that rely on the information. And what we've been saying to the organisation is around having partnerships that have two main dimensions. One is around mutual respect. Certainly the ABS has had partnerships with people that's generally been on the ABS's terms, in terms of what can you do for us. But we also want to talk to our partners and stakeholders around what are the mutual benefits that we can receive from the work we do. And that's quite a different perspective. And if I could just take that analogy just a little bit further, one of the dimensions that we certainly recognise is unless we have relationships and partnerships that are built around mutual benefit, it's going to be a very one-sided relationship and not going to be a long-term relationship. So if you sort of put it in terms of your personal life, if you're the only person benefiting from that relationship, you probably won't find it lasting particularly long. But I suppose the other dimension that we also think about is if we overly constrain access to statistics and the underlying data sets, and therefore also constrain the insights that follow, we're also potentially limiting the capacity to realise our country's potential. A robust national statistical system is as much a component of essential national infrastructure as our transport networks and utilities. I'm aware that there is a widely held view that the ABS has not done enough to make data available, that we haven't built relationships which enable the full potential of our data to be realised. And I suppose, particularly from my perspective, I also was a major user of ABS data, and I also share this view before I joined the ABS, but I would note that we've already made a number of changes over the past 6 months. Our legislation, largely dating back to the mid-1970s, does have some clear constraints, but it also expects that we maximise the use of data balanced against privacy requirements, particularly for sensitive information that individuals provide us, and our legislation is very firm around the requirements and constraints that we have. But we also have the opportunity to develop workable solutions within our existing legislative framework, and that process is underway now, and tangible improvements have already been achieved, and we're also seeking further legal advice on the opportunities to take that further. The government also, quite interestingly, has given us the opportunity to come back with proposals to revisit the legislative framework that the Bureau operates under. Our legislation does date back about 40 years, in quite a different information environment, quite a different perspective around privacy and sensitivity of data. So we are undertaking a long, I think a fairly lengthy process. It certainly won't be a quick process to engage with the community, to engage with key stakeholders around what a new contemporary framework might look like for the ABS legislation. This is something we have to get right, rather than rush it and come up with the wrong solutions, because it really will set the ABS up for the next generation, potentially probably for 20 to 30 years. I doubt that it'll be another 40 years before the legislative framework will be revisited. And a particular focus will be on access to microdata. This data offers enormous analytical opportunities, but any access arrangements must be navigated with care in order to respect the confidentiality and privacy expectations of our citizens and data providers. We intend to navigate this path to find the right balance between realising the potential of data and respecting the legitimate privacy concerns of the community, using new technology and statistical tools to help deliver this balance. I can give you just, I suppose, two examples. One is, as many people would know, the ABS does have a linked data set from the census. So in 2006, 2011, and we're looking with the 2016 census, to make that, to continue that linkage of a proportion of the census sample. We're also looking to provide that available through our data labs that people can access in different state capital cities. And certainly the Melbourne Institute are quite keen in terms of some of the work that they can do with that. The other aspect that goes to, I suppose, some of the statistical tools that have been developed is the ABS has developed a methodology called confidentiality on the fly, where in terms of different analysis and, I suppose, generation of information from different data sets, can actually, within the program of the statistical tool, provide people with some certainty that they won't disclose information about key individuals that would be sensitive. We're testing that out with a few of our government colleagues as well. They're using their large administrative data sets and testing out this mechanism. But I suppose it is just another way in which, if you have a place like the Bureau that has good methodology, good approaches and good technical skills, and you direct it towards a worthwhile purpose, you can actually come up with a result that actually does produce a benefit, not just for the Bureau and for our users, but for many other users of sensitive data. Now we do, I suppose, see ourselves increasingly as a key player in an elaborate and interconnected information environment. We're certainly looking to establish more and better value partnerships that will develop value to the ABS, certainly, but also value to our partners. And we seek to be a more open and engaged organisation. So in conclusion, the ABS has a 110-year history. It is an iconic organisation. It does have a reputation, both domestically and internationally, that few organisations would surpass. Over this time, it's certainly confronted many challenges and has been required to transform on numerous occasions over that 110 years. But what we want to see is the organisation that actually confronts and faces up to the next set of challenges and transformations. The ABS will continue to provide the extensive range of robust and timely information which guides economic decision making that you all rely on. But it also needs to be an organisation which is more innovative, seizing opportunities and meeting both contemporary information opportunities and contemporary information needs. And it needs to be also an organisation which better values and pursues partnerships to fully realise the potential of the nation's data. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, that was very good. Thanks, David. And look, I liked the point you made about the elaborate and interconnected information environment, as everyone would be aware it is today. So what we might do now, we've got about 15 minutes or actually we don't have that much time because we technically have to have afternoon tea. We've got time for a few questions. Would there be any questions from the audience? Up here, could you please say your name and where you're from, please?
It's quite interesting what you're saying about this $250 million is giving you incredible opportunity to develop capabilities. And in terms of your data generally, you've got a lot of people that have high willingness to pay potentially for that data. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on, I think it is important that it's freely available as well, but maybe having a system where you have earlier paid access, and then free access to big data. So news organisations and maybe forecasters and stockbroking firms, things that might have a very high level of data could actually recover your costs.
It's interesting to mention. Yes, people do value our data. I find that they increasingly don't want to pay for it. And that's probably the dimension. There are probably a couple of things I'll say. One is taxpayers have already paid for the ABS's dimension, so taxpayers should get the data for free in terms of the general information. And everyone should get equal access. So I'm not about to provide special access to those that pay first. What I would say is that there are the opportunities for us to do more, I suppose, transformational stuff with the data. and provide specialised services for people who have special needs. And in those instances, I've got no qualms about expecting them to pay. Just to give you a sense, the ABS probably receives about 10% of our revenue on a fee-for-service basis, so 90% is appropriation funding. I think there are opportunities, particularly as we get into, I suppose, more interesting ways of using the data for us to expand that, but nonetheless I still expect ABS will largely be taxpayer funded and freely available.
Okay, so we've got one question there. Do we have one more up there? If we get perhaps a microphone up. Oh, okay.
Just a quick question. SDMX is, I think, a much better way to deliver the data. Is there any progress on SDMX?
I'm not going to talk about particular dimensions, but certainly one thing that we are doing in our $250 million infrastructure rebuild is, I suppose, doing two aspects. One, we're actually going back to tours about what is the nature of our economic statistics program and what is the nature of our people and social statistics program, and looking to redesign it. So in terms of how we capture information, how we process it, and how we disseminate it. So we are at the moment looking at machine-to-machine readable processes, which I think goes very much to what you're talking about, and opportunities for us to convey information back to people in more contemporary ways. At the moment we have very, I suppose, a cottage industry approach. Every different collection in the Bureau is special, and it's run by very special people who have their own special ways of doing things. We're looking to have a more regularised approach across our statistical series.
Matt Butland?
David, if you take a long view of over the last 110 years and back into the 19th century, there are some big shifts in the way that we have collected statistics that have primarily been driven by some quite big shifts in the needs, particularly by government. If you take the case of the Arbitration Commission, in fact the balance of payments and Roland Wilson and so on and so on. So the question is, what views do you have on the next big thing for the ABS?
I think probably, at least in the short term, Matthew, it's more around us collecting information in smarter ways. So I don't necessarily see a big change in terms of, I suppose, the core information that we collect, but we will collect it differently. We'll certainly try and capture more of the administrative data, more of the commercial data that's already available. I think the next step is probably more around how we can bring some of that data together and bring some of the insights around the wicked policy problems, around the sort of major issues where I suppose a more siloed approach to the information doesn't actually give you much insight.
Well, I mean, it's probably time for afternoon tea, so which is a shame, because I think we've all learned a lot today, and very important issues. But I'd encourage you, if David's still around, perhaps to chat with David over afternoon tea. So, having said that, I'd like to express the appreciation of the Economic Society of Australia Queensland, and indeed the entire Economic Society and the organising committee for the presentation this afternoon, and thanks so much, and we wish you all the best with improving the ABS and making sure that the data is the highest quality and most reliable that it can be. So thank you, David.
Thanks very much.